I have a very long history of questionable judgments. Will that do? That's all she had to say, and I was hooked. I'm not a very good fish, but I would swim 1,000 seas to get to her. That's not hyperbole, and is in fact coming from someone who flunked pollywogs twice. True story. Twitter is such a horror show. As you smell the desperation coming off the tweets, like grease being spit from the corn dog stand at some lonesome county fair in the middle of nowhere. The tweets I've read of hers are different because she clearly knows this is all a big put on. And once we're done being punked, the great Oz will finally make an appearance and lay all of our most hellacious fears to rest. But words aren't advancing as fast as they were a week ago. And perhaps that's because I smoked some pot. Or maybe it's simply because that New Year's smell has already worn off. And it's back to expecting very little and wishing for even less. I cast myself out into the middle of the river because I'm better off alone than when I'm with a bunch of people I don't care to know. And I find myself doing tricks like some overeducated killer whale. A good book is fine and dandy, but liquor is quicker. If only me and alcohol didn't have such a love and hate relationship. I'm better off inhaling than I am swallowing, and that's just the way it has always been. Even when I was shooting tiny NyQuil plastic cups of Corvo Gold at this awful pizza place called Sandro's. All she had to do was pay me no mind, and I was ready to go back to school and finally get my degree in English, so I could get on social media and forget how to actually communicate with another human being. As astrology goes, I'm a Cancer, but I hardly believe in that sort of thing because I've never had much use for water. That's not hyperbole. And just like my mother, I'd rather drink iced tea over water any old day of the week. And that includes spring or purified. I was writing these poems. I just got on this writing jag of writing poems. People I met on, or not actually met, but I came in contact with on Twitter. Shay. I don't know her. She doesn't even follow me. Still, there's something about her tweets that keeps me coming back for more introspection. I guess there are people on Twitter that only want to fuck, whatever that means. But that's just not me, because I would so much prefer a real connection with a real human being. Shay cuts her wrists and bleeds into her tweets. And that kind of anguish must be rewarded and never ignored. Sometimes, when losing my mind, I think Shay might be the mountain I would desire to climb if I wasn't afraid of heights, and the film Vertigo didn't haunt my waking dreams like Tickle Me Elmo on a 7-day bender. I'm new here. No, really I am. I'm only actually here to hang up my radio show like a trench coat to a rusty nail, and maybe to find someone who isn't afraid to admit they're also afraid. I lost in the consonants and vowels of her fleshy alabaster subtext. I bet knowing her would be like wrestling an alligator while wearing only your paid-for smile. I know I'm punching way above my weight. And since COVID, I've lost 21 pounds and gained, I pray, not even half of that back. Still, there's something about her mysterious prose that keeps me both hungry and starving for direction. I've been going to this Italian import store since I was 16 years old, when I lived on Lander Road with my father and uh, his new wife, Joyce. And I love this place. And it was one of really the only constant then. The only thing that it made me feel good, it made me feel good. It was nice. And they've always been consistent, even through the pandemic, with the, really good ingredients. And their subs are so I always get the same sub, always. This is for the entire Ferraris family, also for everyone who works at Ferraris. The sandwich I get is Italian with hot peppers, and the poem is called Italian Hot. Italian Hot. Been going there since I was 16. I always get the same exact deli sub. It never fails to make me happy. I used to walk from my mom's at Acacia. Even in the winter, I would get my sub and I'd eat it in the bus shelter across the street. I just couldn't wait to sink my teeth into all that flavorful goodness. During the pandemic, they've been one of the few constants. I love walking in and everyone saying hello. Seeing Chick sitting there, espousing his wisdom, always brings me joy. I'll never forget Mr. Ferrara, shuffling around the place. One day, he told me that he owned a Duesenberg automobile. I hope someday to get to ride in it, because riding with a Ferrara would be like riding with royalty. People over the years tell me about this or that Italian grocery, and I just shake my head, because I know none of them hold a pepperoni to Ferrara's Imported Foods in Mayfield Heights, Ohio. The bread's always baked right on the premises, and the meat and cheese, the cheeses are always, and the meats and cheeses are always sliced fresh daily. Once my father said, "Why do you waste your money?" And I just looked at him, because clearly my father never learned that a really good submarine sandwich can cure many of the ills of this cockeyed world. Chick always remembers me as working at the Mayland Theater, which recently has been torn down. They took down the whole thing, even what was behind it. He's right, I did work there for a hot second. Still, I'm always surprised that he remembers me from back then. Ferrara's is like the neighborhood bar, where everyone knows your name. But instead of spirits, they deal in cold cuts and pasta sauce. And I am the better for it. And so are so many other people. Paul called for my friend Paul Friedman. Paul called and said he had the virus, and the news rocked me to my core. When he said, "You don't think you'll be the one who gets it," I could hear it in his voice that he was scared. I told him if he needed anything at all, to call. But I knew that he probably wouldn't, because that's just not in his nature to ask anyone for help. Paul likes to be the one who picks up the check, and the one who never wants to feel he owes anyone anything. His family money keeps him distant from feelings of any real weight. We became close after my mother passed away, and I found myself going up to his condo because I was tired of being by myself and tired of always being tired. We would take Lyft to Akron to meet with his dog trainers, or out to some restaurant for dinner, and it felt good having a friend in Cleveland, and it was wonderful for once not having to explain where I'd been. Things got bad, though, when I moved in and he realized that he'd bitten off more than he could chew. I was fortunate to have another place to land, because soon staying with him became unbearable, and I needed somewhere for quiet reflection so I could begin to grieve the death of my mother and figure out my next move. Grieve! When I heard Paul's voice on the phone, it made me think of Saul on the road to Damascus, and how at some point in all of our lives we're led to a jumping off place where we either accept conversion or the worst fate of not being able to look ourselves in the mirror. Paul called, and I offered to walk Gabe because I desperately want to be of service and to show him that there are people who care about him and attach no strings to the friendship. When he wouldn't take back the key, I understood that he was trying his best to say that he was sorry for not being able to do more. And it was okay because in the short time we hung out, I felt as if we'd become like brothers, and he had nothing to feel guilty about, nothing at all. I hope he calls, and maybe we can pick him up some matzo ball soup from Jack's, or maybe he just needs someone to listen. I want to be that friend, and for Paul to know that someone has his back and cares what happens to him. Strong personality. How about we burn each other to the ground and see whose embers are hotter? How about we forge ahead without looking back and see who gets exhausted first? How about you stop stammering and stuttering because I uncovered who and what you are before you could even form your first sentence and get on with the business of surviving? All my life, people have looked to me for answers, while at the same time not taking me seriously, because the energy I create leaves them questioning their own self-worth. All my life, I've been held to a higher standard, because like the sun, I'm 93 million miles away, while also being right there to remind you of both your successes and your failures. All my life, the horses in my head have run me ragged, but I've learned to love and accept them because they're the only friends I can rely upon when the going gets rough and the tough are all but invisible. I need to go to excuse me. I need to go to Aldi's, pick up a few things, and when we return home, we'll eat dinner, watch some television, and then I'll tell my roommate to go to bed because she falls out of her camping chair and ends up. And then I'll tell my roommate to go to bed before she falls out of her camping chair and ends up on the floor, dreaming of Doug, Puggles, and the Rainbow Bridge. Tonight, we're going to have pork with apples and some kind of rice. It was very good. I like to make dinner for us because taking care of another just makes sense, and I would have it no other way. The exterminator is coming back because circus people like us never get a reprieve from the governor, as our execution looms over our heads like a Christmas ham with no true sense of how delicious it is. How about we turn the tables and instead you take care of everyone and everything and see how good a job you do dotting the I's and crossing the T's when death comes to your door and you have forgotten how to receive an unwanted visitor? How about we stop lamenting our current state of distress and look to the future as a stronghold and not just another excuse to hide in the closet or drive off a bridge? How about, for once, you come through like gangbusters? Because I believe you have it in you to do great things once you give up the ghosts of the past and present. Let's try that line again. How about for once you come through like gangbusters? Because I believe you have it in you to do great things once you give up the ghosts of past and present fears and celebrate the beautiful human you've always been. You've always been beautiful. You are so beautiful. One more poem. This is for Holly and Joe. It's called Hubba Hubba. Hubba Hubba. Hubba Hubba. You know, I've known Joe since Memorial Junior. I'm not going to mention Mrs. Coffee. Don't worry, Joe. It's okay. It's cool. But anyway, I've known Joe since Memorial, and we went to Brush, and I love him. And he's the kind of guy that everybody, when he's in a room, everybody, gathers around him like a circle. And Joe's like the sun. Hubba Hubba for Holly and Joe. And Holly, what do I say about Holly? Well, I say chicken paprikash. Holly's a goddess. Recently, I told Joe he reminded me of Cedric the Entertainer. I intended it as a compliment, but Joe didn't seem to take it that way, which I guess I understand because Cedric is neither very funny nor fresh. What Joe failed to grasp was that I was talking about how handsome I find Cedric and Joe to both be, and also how grounding a life force they both are. I have written about this before, how Joe and I shared a homeroom all through junior high and high school. School was never an easy fit for me. And Joe always made the mornings go down easier with how laid back he is and how he'd always greet you with that unmissable smile that could help land a space shuttle in turbulent flight. Meeting Holly was a revelation. I'm still finding myself getting accustomed to. True story. Because like me, she never fails to remind you who she is and how you can better serve her and yourself in this cracked ideology of a failing world order. Joe needs someone strong to keep him in line and away from black holes in the mind. And Holly does that so expertly. You don't even see the moving parts of their relationship. But what you do experience is real love, as it glows as brightly as Christmas cheer. Holly told me once she liked how I always called Joe out on his shit. And I found that to be a high compliment. And I found that to be such a high compliment, I almost lost myself in the swirling clouds of narcissism. I always thought the beautiful people were something unattainable, out of step with the Purina dog chow day-to-day that I hung out with. Holly and Joe, let me try that whole thing again. I always thought the beautiful people were something unattainable and out of step with the Purina dog chow day-to-day. Then I hung out with Holly and Joe and came to realize the beautiful people are each and every one of us. Once we accept who we are, and most assuredly will become. Sometimes I take things too personally. That's just the way I roll. As my thin skin gets the best of me and I lose control and burn another Billy Joel bridge. This time I reined myself in because I believe I finally found a family that accepts me for who I am and doesn't let the fact that I'm a circus person get in the way of everything that is good and holy. Let's go get a sub.